The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web. But what happens when something from beyond the Force enters that web, something the Force itself cannot comprehend? Above Coruscant, the night sky trembled. Every sensor across the Imperial core registered the same impossible reading, a distortion spreading through hyperspace like a wound tearing open reality itself. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a meteor. It was something else, a pulse of destructive energy so concentrated that Imperial scientists described it as a god falling through the stars. Deep within his obsidian citadel, Emperor Palpatine's yellow eyes snapped open. The Force, his greatest tool, his most intimate power, screamed. Not in warning. In fear. Lord Vader, his voice echoed through the throne chamber, soft yet commanding. At once, the armored figure of Darth Vader knelt before the throne. Yes, my master. Something has arrived. I can feel it even now, a presence the Force cannot touch. Go. Find it. Where shall I begin? Vader's mechanical voice rasped. Everywhere, Palpatine hissed. For it is not of this galaxy. Across the void of space, near the system of Mustafar, a golden glow flickered, faint at first, then pulsing into blinding purple radiance. The fabric of hyperspace split, like glass fracturing under divine pressure. From within the rift stepped a slender, feline figure dressed in royal garb, yawning as if he'd just awoken from a particularly pleasant nap. Beerus, god of destruction, hovered silently amid the black. He blinked once, twice, then frowned. This isn't my universe, he murmured, his voice low and smooth. Whis. No answer. Only the hum of nearby stars. He floated in stillness, golden eyes narrowing as he reached out, not with the Force, but with something older, more primal. His awareness expanded across entire systems. He felt the tremors of countless lives, the mechanical heartbeat of machines, the push and pull of light and darkness warring for dominance. It was chaotic. Inelegant. Unbalanced. TCH, Beerus clicked his tongue. Typical mortal nonsense. But, intriguing. Below him, Mustafar burned, rivers of lava winding like blood vessels through a dying world. A fortress perched on its surface, dark and foreboding. Through his heightened senses, Beerus detected two faint yet powerful signatures, twisted, sharp, and humming with an energy that smelled almost like the destruction he embodied. But it wasn't. It was something else. Something trying to imitate the divine. The so-called dark side, he muttered. How amusing. He drifted lower, golden aura flaring faintly. The heat of Mustafar meant nothing to him. The volcanic air parted before him like mist. For miles around, Imperial patrol droids malfunctioned, their sensors collapsing under an energy they couldn't categorize. In the distance, Vader's ship descended through the atmosphere, drawn by the same anomaly. Back on Coruscant, Palpatine's meditation chamber glowed faint red. He sat cross-legged, hands outstretched, probing the disturbance. But even his mastery, sharpened by decades of Sith knowledge, met resistance. The Force would not obey him. It is not dark, nor light, he whispered to himself. It simply is. For the first time since he'd become Emperor, Palpatine felt powerless. That realization thrilled him. If he could harness this being, this source of power that existed outside the Force, he could transcend even the Sith. He could become eternal. His laughter filled the chamber, a rasping, cracked echo that shook the hearts of those unfortunate enough to hear it. Meanwhile, Beerus landed gracefully on a blackened ridge overlooking the molten plains. He breathed in deeply. Smells like burnt metal and despair. I like it. He raised a single hand and flicked his claw. The air rippled. A distant Imperial refinery, half a kilometer away, erased itself in silence. Not an explosion, not a flame. Simply gone. I suppose this universe needs a little cleaning. For a moment, he admired his handiwork. Then, sensing something, he turned his head. Far off, a ship approached. Sleek, black, and brimming with the cold precision of its master. Beerus murmured. Another mortal, perhaps. The vessel landed on the scorched ground below, hissed open, and Darth Vader emerged, cape fluttering in the rising heat. His mechanical breathing echoed against the mountain rock as he advanced. Beerus tilted his head, faintly amused. You don't look like much fun. Vader ignited his crimson lightsaber. Identify yourself. Beerus blinked. Oh, that's cute. A glow stick. He grinned. Do you plan to poke me with it? Vader said nothing. He raised his weapon in challenge, the crimson blade humming to life. Beerus sighed and lifted one finger. A violet spark danced in the air, Hakai energy condensed into a single, shimmering point. Before Vader could take a step, the ground beneath him buckled. The very atoms of the surface began to unravel. His armor vibrated, warning lights flaring red as systems overloaded from proximity alone. Enough, Beerus said, flicking his wrist. Instantly, the destructive energy dissipated, leaving Vader standing amidst molten rock, shaken but alive. You amuse me, Beerus said softly. Most mortals are gone before I finish a sentence. What are you? Vader demanded. A god. Or a cat. Depends on who you ask. Beerus smiled. And you? Vader hesitated. I serve the Emperor. Beerus's expression darkened. Emperor? He tilted his head thoughtfully. There's always an emperor. Always mortals who think they rule creation. He turned away, golden aura dimming. Tell your emperor, if he wishes to meet me, he'll find me when I'm bored enough to care. With a gentle push, Beerus rose into the air, vanishing into the clouds, leaving Vader staring into the burning sky. The Sith Lord's thoughts were consumed. Vader ignited his crimson lightsaber. Identify yourself. Beerus blinked. Oh, that's cute. A glow stick. He grinned. Do you plan to poke me with it? Vader said nothing. He raised his weapon in challenge, the crimson blade humming to life. Beerus sighed and lifted one finger. A violet spark danced in the air, Hakai energy condensed into a single, shimmering point. Before Vader could take a step, the ground beneath him buckled. The very atoms of the surface began to unravel. His armor vibrated, warning lights flaring red as systems overloaded from proximity alone. Enough, Beerus said, flicking his wrist. Instantly, the destructive energy dissipated, leaving Vader standing amidst molten rock, shaken but alive. You amuse me, Beerus said softly. Most mortals are gone before I finish a sentence. What are you? Vader demanded. A god. Or a cat. Depends on who you ask. Beerus smiled. And you? Vader hesitated. I serve the Emperor. Beerus's expression darkened. Emperor? He tilted his head thoughtfully. There's always an emperor. Always mortals who think they rule creation. He turned away, golden aura dimming. Tell your emperor, if he wishes to meet me, he'll find me when I'm bored enough to care. With a gentle push, Beerus rose into the air, vanishing into the clouds, leaving Vader staring into the burning sky. The Sith Lord's thoughts were consumed by a single, chilling truth. This was no ordinary threat. This was something that could erase worlds. Back on Coruscant, the Emperor felt it, a flicker of presence brushing the edge of his perception. His lips curved into a thin, greedy smile. So, the god has arrived. He rose from his throne, cloak flowing like shadow. Then the galaxy itself will bend or burn. Either way, the Force shall be mine. The winds of Coruscant never howled like this before. The storm clouds parted, and out of that violet fissure in the sky descended a figure so alien, so calm, that even the storm itself seemed to pause out of respect. The lightning froze mid-strike for a heartbeat, and then continued, as if uncertain whether it had the right to move. Beerus hovered above the skyline, purple skin glistening under the electric light, gold bands glinting, and that lazy, feline smirk curling across his lips. He murmured, tail swaying lazily behind him. This place smells chaotic. But not in a fun way. His yellow eyes swept the glittering towers of the imperial city. The air here was thick with control, fear, and the faint, metallic hum of machinery. Yet beneath it all, deeper, hidden, he felt it. A tremor. Something fundamental in this galaxy's energy was off balance. The Force, though he did not yet have a name for it, was screaming silently, and Beerus could feel its instability clawing at his divine senses. Like a glass of water trembling on a shaking table, the entire galaxy was vibrating with an invisible sickness. Whis would have loved this place, Beerus thought. So full of conflict and ego. Shame he's not here to see me play with it. He touched down gently atop one of Coruscant's skyscrapers, the impact causing a wave of wind that shattered nearby transparent steel windows. Civilians screamed far below, their voices ants in the wind. Deep within the Imperial Palace, alarms blared through Palpatine's throne chamber. Unregistered energy surge, Sector 3219, barked a terrified officer, sweat gleaming under the red light of warning sirens. Palpatine didn't move. He merely closed his eyes, letting the sound of chaos fade into silence. And then, he felt it. That impossible energy. Cold, heavy, ancient, and yet utterly alien to the Force. It was like staring into the abyss and realizing the abyss wasn't staring back, it didn't care. Vader. The Emperor's voice slithered through the comms like a shadow. You feel it too, don't you? In his meditation chamber aboard the Executor, Darth Vader's mechanical breathing slowed. The sensation rippled through him like molten iron, oppressive, suffocating. Even through layers of armor and cybernetics, the weight of that power pressed against his chest. Yes, my master, Vader replied, voice low. It is not the Force. It is something older. Go, Palpatine commanded. Find its source. Bring me what has arrived. If it resists. A pause. The Emperor's smile could be heard in his silence. Destroy it. High above, Beerus stretched his arms and yawned. Such noise, he muttered, flicking his claw lazily toward an oncoming Imperial gunship. The air rippled, and the ship disintegrated, reduced to shimmering purple dust before it could fire a single shot. Not even an explosion, just erasure. Hakai, he whispered absent-mindedly. Screams echoed from nearby towers as debris rained. Beerus looked mildly amused, watching the chaos below like a man watching ants argue over crumbs. Typical mortals, he said. They see something they don't understand and immediately start shooting. TSK. In orbit, Vader's fleet approached the capital's upper atmosphere. His flagship, the Executor, cut through the storm clouds like a knife, and the Dark Lord of the Sith prepared for descent. Through the viewport, lightning illuminated the purple energy radiating from one point on the planet's surface. There, Vader said coldly. Take me down. As the dropship descended, Beerus sat cross-legged on the skyscraper's edge, now lazily munching on a stolen pastry he had plucked from a terrified street vendor below. His ears twitched as he sensed movement. Oh. He smirked. Another curious fool coming to bother me. The ship landed nearby, and Darth Vader stepped out, black armor gleaming under the rain, cape billowing. Stormtroopers followed, blasters raised. Beerus tilted his head, unimpressed. My. You look grumpy. Did someone forget your snack time? Identify yourself, Vader's voice thundered, distorted through his mask. You are trespassing in Imperial territory. Beerus chuckled. Imperial? Oh, so you're the ones responsible for this mess of energy I'm feeling. He stood, his aura flaring faintly. The troopers staggered back as their rifles began to melt from the sheer heat of his ki. Who are you? Vader demanded, tightening his grip on his lightsaber. Me. Beerus blinked innocently, licking the last of his pastry sugar off his fingers. I'm a god of destruction. You can call me Beerus. The words hit like thunder. Vader ignited his crimson blade with a snap hiss, the red glow reflecting off Beerus's golden armbands. A god? Vader hissed. There is no god but the Force. Beerus's tail flicked once. The Force, he repeated, intrigued. So that's what you call it here. This energy I've been feeling. Interesting. But you're wrong. The Force isn't a god. It's a symptom. Before Vader could react, Beerus vanished. One blink. A rush of air. Then he reappeared behind Vader, one finger pressed lightly to the Dark Lord's helmet. Too slow. Vader's armor locked up, an invisible grip freezing him in place. Sparks crackled as he tried to move, but Beerus only sighed and flicked him on the chest. The entire ship lurched, crushed inward by an invisible pulse that shattered the rooftop beneath them. Stormtroopers were flung off into the air like ragdolls. Beerus floated casually among the debris, watching Vader crash to his knees. You mortals really should stop relying on toys, he said, glancing at the flickering red saber that had shorted out from the energy backlash. That dark side thing you're using, it's like mold growing in a rotten fruit. Vader coughed, his breathing stuttering. You serve the light. Beerus chuckled, leaning close, eyes glowing gold. Light? Dark? I serve balance. If that means destroying you, or your emperor, or this whole galaxy, he smirked, whispering the next words, then so be it. Far across the stars, in the swamps of Dagobah, Yoda opened his eyes. Lightning illuminated his wrinkled face, reflecting fear not seen in centuries. Awakened, has something that is not of the Force. He leaned on his cane, whispering to the wind. And, this may be, for all. The lightning had not stopped for days. Over the Imperial Palace, the sky remained bruised and violent, a constant reminder of the purple storm that tore through the heavens when he arrived. The being called Beerus. Reports had flooded in from across Coruscant, of floating debris, vanished platoons, and a strange, feline humanoid who destroyed a star destroyer with a wave of his hand. But Palpatine did not fear him. He hungered for him. In the throne room, only the low hum of machinery and the flickering blue of the holoprojector filled the silence. Vader knelt, head bowed, sparks still smoking from the fight that left his armor half destroyed. He is not of the Force, my master, Vader rasped. Blades, blasters, the dark side itself, nothing affects him. Palpatine leaned forward from his throne, yellow eyes burning through the shadows. And yet, he exists. I felt him, Lord Vader. A presence that even the Force recoils from. He rose slowly, his robes trailing like liquid night. What would you say he is, my apprentice? Vader hesitated. He called himself, a god of destruction. The word god lingered in the air like a curse. Palpatine's lips curled into a predatory grin. Then we will see, he whispered, whether gods bleed. Later that night, deep beneath the palace, Palpatine descended into his forbidden chamber, a sanctum known only to him and the Force itself. The walls pulsed faintly with veins of red crystal, etched with Sith runes older than the Republic. At the center, a sphere of energy shimmered, the result of decades of dark side alchemy, a twisted engine built to pierce the veil of existence. Originally designed to communicate with the netherworld of the Force, it now flickered with unstable energy after Beerus's arrival. Sidious approached, touching the sphere's surface. Visions flooded his mind, not of spirits or dead Sith, but of universes. He saw colors and dimensions that didn't obey the rules of his reality. And within that madness, a single, lazy voice echoed back. "Peeking, are we?" Beerus's voice teased, the sound vibrating through Palpatine's mind. Sidious froze. Even through the barrier of worlds, Beerus's energy pressed against his consciousness, cold, sharp, divine. "So, you found me," Beerus said. "You're that wrinkled mortal who reeks of corruption." Palpatine smirked, despite the sweat forming on his brow. "You are powerful, creature. But you misunderstand where you stand. In my galaxy, power is the Force. All that exists bends to it." Beerus yawned. "Oh please. I don't bend to anything. If anything, the Force bends around me." Lightning erupted from the sphere, throwing Palpatine backward. The air shimmered with violet flames, and for a brief second, Beerus appeared within the chamber, sitting cross-legged in midair, utterly unimpressed. The Emperor staggered to his feet, clutching his staff. "You dare intrude upon the throne of the Sith?" Beerus tilted his head. "Throne? You call this dark little cave a throne? How charming." He floated closer, eyes gleaming gold. "Tell me, little Emperor, what's your role in this cosmic play?" Palpatine's lips curled into a wicked grin. "To rule. To shape life and death. To control the Force itself." Beerus's tail swayed, amused. "Control? You can't even control your own energy leaks. The Force here is choking on your greed." He glanced around the chamber, where the crystals trembled from his mere presence. "You're rotting your galaxy from the inside, old man. No wonder I was summoned here, your corruption stinks across dimensions." The Emperor's amusement faltered. He raised both hands, channeling dark side lightning that danced across the chamber like coiling serpents, 1,000 bolts converging upon Beerus. But the god didn't even blink. The lightning hit, and vanished. Not absorbed, not deflected, simply erased. Beerus looked almost bored. That tickled. "You done?" With one finger, he flicked the air. The entire chamber collapsed. Stone shattered. Energy conduits melted. The floor cracked open like a wound. Palpatine barely had time to throw up a barrier before he was hurled across the room, his robes catching fire from the pressure. When the dust settled, Beerus floated in the center of the devastation, purring softly. "I'll give you credit," he said, stretching. "You've got ambition. I like that. Reminds me of a mortal who once thought he could beat me in an arm wrestling match." He exploded. Palpatine staggered to his feet, wheezing, but smiling. "You speak of balance, God," he hissed. "And yet you destroy without thought." Beerus's gaze sharpened. "Destruction is balance. I erase what corrupts creation. You, on the other hand, twist it for your ego." "Perhaps," Palpatine said, brushing dust from his sleeve. "But tell me, if destruction restores balance, why not let me help you do it?" Beerus blinked, curious now. The Emperor took a step forward, eyes glowing with sinister brilliance. I can show you the source of the rot, the Force itself. It's old. Weak. Bound by rules. Together, we could remake it. I, as the mind, and you, as the hand. Beerus tilted his head, tail flicking thoughtfully. A partnership between a god and a wrinkled Sith, how quaint. He leaned closer, voice low. But tell me something, Palpatine. What happens when I decide you're part of the rot? Silence. For the first time in decades, the Emperor had no reply. Beerus grinned, slow, toothy, and amused. Don't worry, he purred. I'm not bored yet. Keep me entertained, and maybe I won't destroy your galaxy just yet. He vanished in a blink, leaving behind a swirl of violet smoke and a throne room trembling from his power. Palpatine remained still, breathing hard. Then, slowly, a wicked smile spread across his face. Yes, he whispered. You will be mine, God. One way, or another. The lava world of Mustafar burned like a wound in space. Rivers of molten fire carved through blackened stone, while geysers of flame erupted from deep fissures, lighting the night sky with a violent glow. For centuries, this planet had been the graveyard of Sith ambition, and the cradle of Vader's rage. But tonight, it would become something else entirely. A proving ground between gods. High above the fiery plains, the shuttle tyrant's hand descended through choking smoke. Inside, Darth Vader stood silent, his cape fluttering under the vessel's pressure fields. Around him, troopers shifted nervously, though none dared speak. He had been summoned personally by the Emperor. Not to destroy this being called Beerus, but to observe him. To test the parameters of divinity, as Sidious had phrased it. The phrase unsettled even Vader. He had faced Jedi masters, rebel armies, and Force spirits. But this creature, this god, was something else. The Force itself recoiled around him. And Vader hated that feeling of powerlessness. When the shuttle landed near the black citadel that once served as Vader's fortress, the world went quiet. The usual roar of magma and stone dulled to an eerie hum. Then he appeared. A flash of purple light, and Beerus hovered above the lava river, arms folded, tail swaying lazily behind him. He looked utterly at ease, as if Mustafar's heat were a mere sauna for his amusement. Back so soon, Helmet Man? Beerus teased, smirking. Didn't I already flick you into the dirt on your pretty city planet? Vader's grip tightened around his lightsaber, but he didn't ignite it yet. My master wishes to speak with you again. Ah, Beerus yawned. The wrinkly lightning fetishist. That earned a faint hiss from Vader's respirator. He stepped forward, the lava reflecting red light across his armor. You mock powers you don't understand. Oh, I understand them, Beerus replied. I've seen mortals reach for power like you before. You think anger makes you strong. It doesn't. It just makes you noisy. With that, the god of destruction raised a single finger, and the molten river beside him suddenly froze mid-flow, glowing like crystallized amber. Vader stopped mid-step. Beerus turned, casually flicking the surface, and the frozen lava shattered like glass, sending red-hot fragments flying upward like burning stars. Pretty, isn't it? Beerus said. Creation and destruction, dancing together. That's balance. Vader finally ignited his saber, the crimson blade bathing the volcanic ridge in blood-red light. Enough philosophy, he said. You claim to destroy to preserve balance. Then prove it. Strike me down. Beerus tilted his head. Oh. You want me to? I fear nothing, Vader said coldly. Beerus's eyes glimmered. You should. The instant Beerus vanished, the air itself seemed to die. A shockwave rippled outward, cracking the volcanic ground. Vader barely registered the blur before Beerus reappeared behind him, one hand resting casually on his shoulder plate. See? Beerus said softly. No fight, no struggle, no resistance. You mortals cling to your anger like its armor. But to me, he gave a small squeeze, and Vader's armor began to dent inward with a screech, it's paper. Vader spun, slashing his saber. Beerus caught the blade with one finger. For a moment, the crimson plasma hissed furiously, yet it didn't cut. It didn't burn. Beerus's finger glowed faintly purple, completely absorbing the saber's energy. Vader's voice trembled beneath his mask. Impossible. Beerus smiled lazily. Everything is impossible until I do it. He released the blade, and its energy suddenly overloaded. The lightsaber exploded in Vader's hand, hurling him backward. Beerus sighed, crossing his arms. This is getting boring. But before he could leave, a voice, twisted and powerful, echoed through the fiery air. Do not disappoint me, Lord Vader. It was Sidious, his voice transmitted directly through the Force. A black sphere of energy materialized above the lava, projecting a ghostly form of the Emperor himself. Beerus turned to face it, unimpressed. Ah! The puppet master himself. Sidious's grin was pure malice. I offer no illusions, God of destruction. I know what you are, and what you seek. You speak of balance, yet all you do is erase. Tell me, how long before you tire of existing gods? Beerus chuckled. You think you understand destruction? You twist power like a child playing with knives. I destroy with purpose. You destroy for ego. The Emperor raised both hands. Then allow me to demonstrate the true purpose of the dark side. The sky itself blackened. Thunder cracked, and crimson lightning split the clouds. The lava rivers surged upward in towering waves of molten fury. All around, the air thickened with dark side energy, a hurricane of pure hatred. Beerus floated amidst it, eyes narrowing. Impressive, for an insect. Sidious's laughter boomed across the planet. You are in my domain now. Beerus's aura flared, a radiant storm of purple energy bursting outward in all directions. The sky split in half, the dark side tempest crushed under the sheer pressure of divine ki. Vader fell to his knees, the very force inside him screaming. Even the Emperor's projection faltered, static distorting his face. Beerus's voice echoed across the volcanic plains like thunder. I grow weary of your tricks. You speak of control, but you're the one being controlled, by your obsession. He raised his hand. For an instant, Sidious felt it, that cold, absolute energy that erased entire stars without trace. Hawkeye. The Emperor's projection imploded into nothingness, gone, erased from existence as if the Force itself forgot he ever spoke. Beerus lowered his hand, exhaling softly. Mortals and their theatrics. He turned to Vader, who knelt, trembling, not from fear, but from realization. The dark side had met something far beyond it. Something the Force could not comprehend. Beerus looked down at him almost kindly. You're angry because you've been lied to, he said. Your master promised you power without end. But he never told you the truth. Vader raised his head. Which is? That all power ends. Eventually. As Beerus ascended into the burning sky, Vader watched him vanish into the clouds of ash. The firelight danced across his armor, painting him in red and gold, like a fallen knight in the presence of a god. Deep in the shadows of his fortress, Vader clenched his fist. "I will find a way," he whispered to the lava below. "Even gods can fall." Far away, on the Imperial throne world, Sidious stood before the shattered remains of his dark conduit. Smoke curled around his hood, his body trembling from the backlash, but his grin was wider than ever. "Oh yes," he hissed. "He can destroy me. Which means, he can be used." The stars whispered warnings long before anyone could hear them. Across the galaxy, from the frozen plains of Hoth to the jungle moons of Yavin, those who were sensitive to the Force woke in cold sweats, hearts racing, visions clouded with violet storms and collapsing suns. Even those without training, farmers, children, pilots, began to dream of an endless void, a pair of golden eyes staring back from the darkness. The Force was trembling. And in a small, mist-shrouded swamp on Dagobah, an old master finally opened his eyes. Dagobah, the swamp of solitude. Lightning flashed through the fog, briefly illuminating the tiny hut nestled between twisted roots and ancient trees. Inside, Yoda sat motionless, his eyes closed, his breathing slow, the air around him vibrating with faint blue ripples. A small lamp flickered beside him. It dimmed, then went out completely. Yoda murmured, his voice heavy with worry. "Fading, the light has become." The swamp outside groaned as if alive, trees bending under unseen pressure. Even the insects had gone silent. Yoda reached out through the Force, not to see, not to control, but simply to listen. And what he heard chilled him. It was not the usual hum of life and balance. It was a scream, vast, distant, and yet echoing through every living thing. The Force wasn't just disturbed, it was breaking. "Ancient, this feeling is not," Yoda whispered. "But older, far older than the Jedi, or the Sith." He leaned forward, touching the muddy ground with his clawed hand. "The balance, undone it is. Something outside, has entered within." The swamp trembled again. A small creature darted past his door, fleeing, as if the planet itself feared what was coming. Meanwhile, Rebel Outpost, Yavin 4. Luke Skywalker bolted upright in his bunk, gasping for air. Sweat dripped down his face, and for a moment, he didn't know where he was. The dream had been so vivid, a world of purple fire, a figure floating above it, effortlessly crushing ships and soldiers like toys. And that voice, calm, amused, ancient. "You mortals really should stop relying on toys." Luke rubbed his temples. That voice, it wasn't human. The Force shimmered faintly around him, but it felt different. He had been training with Leia and what few fragments of Jedi knowledge they had recovered, yet this sensation was nothing like he'd felt before. The Force wasn't flowing. It was rippling. Leia entered, concerned. "Another nightmare?" Luke shook his head. "Not a nightmare. A warning. The Force is off." Leia frowned. "You mean the Emperor?" "No," Luke's gaze drifted toward the stars outside the viewport. "This is something else. Jedi Archive, the ghost of Coruscant. Far beneath the ruins of the old Jedi Temple, long since stripped by the Empire, a hidden holocron flickered to life. Its glow was faint, its message fragmented by centuries of dust and decay. If ever the balance is torn by mortal will, the Voidwalker will awaken. Not light. Not dark. But the hand of ending. The voice was old, impossibly ancient, predating even the Old Republic. And as the hologram faded, one word pulsed in its final line of code. Beerus. Deep space, aboard the Executor. Vader stood on the bridge, the stars reflecting across his obsidian armor. The officers worked in silence, none daring to speak after the recent events on Mustafar. The memory of Beerus's effortless dominance hung over them like a ghost. "Report," Vader said. Admiral Piett swallowed. "My lord, long-range sensors have detected gravitational anomalies throughout the core worlds. Unexplained collapses in hyperspace routes. It's as if the galaxy's energy patterns are twisting." Vader's mechanical breathing deepened. He could feel it, like static in his mind, like sand grinding inside a machine. The Force itself was convulsing. And somewhere, deep in that chaos, he could still sense Beerus. It was faint, but unmistakable, a pulse, vast and serene, cutting through the storm of the Force like a perfect note in a broken symphony. "Prepare my personal shuttle," Vader ordered. "But, my lord." Vader turned, the red glow of his mask freezing Piett mid-sentence. "I will find him." The meeting of the wise. In the swirling mists of Dagobah, Yoda sat once more, this time not alone. A faint shimmer in the air announced the presence of Obi-Wan Kenobi's spirit, glowing faintly blue. "Master," Obi-Wan said softly. "You felt it too." "Felt it?" Yoda whispered. "Living through it, we are." The Force trembles as if dying. Obi-Wan's spirit frowned. The Chosen One's prophecy, could it be unraveling? Yoda shook his head. No, fulfilled it was, by Skywalker's fall and rise. But now, something beyond prophecy this is. Beyond destiny. He looked up at the sky, where the storm clouds twisted unnaturally. A god, some would call it. But not of this galaxy. Obi-Wan's glow flickered. If it is truly divine, what can the Jedi do? Yoda's eyes opened, ancient, sad, determined. Survive, we must. For when balance returns, needed the Jedi will be. The swamp roared again as lightning split a tree in half. Both masters turned toward the disturbance. In the rippling reflection of the water outside, they could see it, a faint, glowing figure, golden eyes glinting through the mist. Yoda's breath caught. Watching, he is. Somewhere between worlds. Beerus floated in meditation. Not in space. Not in time. Somewhere between both. The Force coiled around him like mist, unable to touch him, unable to understand him. He could see the threads of this galaxy's life, billions of souls bound by the same trembling energy field. And he could also see the infection spreading through it, greed, hatred, ambition, imbalance. Whis would be disappointed, he murmured. These mortals have turned their cosmic power into a toy. A ripple passed through him. The Force itself spoke. You do not belong here. Beerus smiled faintly. I never said I did. Leave, or all will unravel. He sighed. I was summoned here by your sickness. So I'll stay, until you're cured. He opened his eyes, and galaxies reflected in them. Far away, Palpatine's secret chamber. Sidious stood amid his new experiments. The old conduit destroyed by Beerus's Hakai had been replaced with a more sinister design, a chamber filled with captive kyber crystals, glowing blood red, linked together in a lattice that pulsed like a living heart. He reached out, feeling the Force's instability as it screamed across the galaxy. Yes, yes, it's working, he hissed. His presence hurts the Force. Weakens it. Which means, soon, I may replace it. The machinery thrummed louder, sparks flying. In the center of the chamber, a swirling rift began to open, like the same tear Beerus arrived through. "Come, God," Palpatine whispered. "Show me your true form, and I shall show you mine." Dagobah, final vision. Yoda clutched his chest as the Force pulsed violently. The swamp rippled, animals screamed, and a vision burst into his mind, flames, shadows, worlds collapsing, and above them all, Beerus, calm as ever, watching it unfold. "Destroy, or save," Yoda gasped. Choice, he must make. And as the storm raged overhead, the last true Jedi whispered into the rain. "Pray, that mercy this God still knows." Coruscant was silent that night. Not the usual hum of engines or endless voices, but a silence born of awe. The kind that made even the air feel sacred, or doomed. Clouds swirled above the Senate district, pulsing faintly purple, as if the very atmosphere was unsure whether to tremble or bow. And then, he arrived. The descent of a god. No ship. No flare. Just presence. A ripple of light bent around a single point in the sky, distorting sound, space, and sense. And from that distortion, Beerus descended, arms crossed, golden eyes half-lidded, his expression calm but curious. Below him, entire sectors powered down as if the planet's core forgot how to function. Speeders stalled midair. Holoscreens died. Even the great Senate tower flickered. Billions felt the same thought, a wordless, primal whisper that crawled into their minds. "Do not move." He landed gently on the landing pad of the Imperial Palace. The durasteel floor cracked beneath his feet, not from weight, but from reverence. Beerus looked around, tail swaying lazily. "So this is the heart of your galaxy," he murmured. "A shrine built on pride." He closed his eyes, feeling it, billions of lives below, humming in disharmony. Anger, greed, hunger, lies. The galaxy's sickness. Its imbalance. And deep beneath all that, something else. A darkness so complete it nearly amused him. "Found you," Beerus said softly. The Emperor's greeting. The massive blast doors hissed open. From within, the familiar crackle of Force lightning illuminated the hall in jagged blue. And then, Emperor Palpatine emerged. His cloak flowed like smoke, his eyes glowed with madness and brilliance. He approached slowly, step by step, as the air shimmered with contained power. "Well, well," Palpatine hissed. "The so-called god of destruction." Beerus turned his head slightly, unimpressed. "So-called?" Palpatine smiled, thin and venomous. "Names are meaningless. What matters, is power. And I sense that you, my celestial visitor, have plenty to spare." He gestured, spreading his hands as lightning danced between his fingers. "Perhaps we can." Before he finished, Beerus flicked his wrist. The lightning evaporated. Palpatine froze, his connection to the Force gone, as if Beerus had simply deleted it. Beerus sighed. "You talk too much." For a long moment, the Emperor said nothing. Then, despite himself, he chuckled. "Oh, magnificent," he whispered. "You truly are beyond the Force." Beerus glanced at him. "The Force? That thing that whispers and pushes at everything? It's a parasite." Palpatine's grin widened. "Exactly. And I wish to be the one who controls it." The offer. They walked together through the Emperor's hall, two figures of nightmare and divinity reflected in the marble. Beerus's steps were silent, Palpatine's echoed like claws on stone. "I have studied this galaxy's energy for decades," Palpatine said. "The Force is flawed, a coin forever flipping between light and dark." Beerus turned his head slightly, unimpressed. "So-called?" Palpatine smiled, thin and venomous. Names are meaningless. What matters is power. And I sense that you, my celestial visitor, have plenty to spare. He gestured, spreading his hands as lightning danced between his fingers. Perhaps we can. Before he finished, Beerus flicked his wrist. The lightning evaporated. Palpatine froze, his connection to the Force gone, as if Beerus had simply deleted it. Beerus sighed. You talk too much. For a long moment, the Emperor said nothing. Then, despite himself, he chuckled. Oh, magnificent, he whispered. You truly are beyond the Force. Beerus glanced at him. The Force? That thing that whispers and pushes at everything? It's a parasite. Palpatine's grin widened. Exactly. And I wish to be the one who controls it. The offer. They walked together through the Emperor's hall, two figures of nightmare and divinity reflected in the marble. Beerus's steps were silent, Palpatine's echoed like claws on stone. I have studied this galaxy's energy for decades, Palpatine said. The Force is flawed, a coin forever flipping between light and dark. Jedi, Sith, both slaves to its nature. Beerus looked unimpressed. And your point? I have found a way to break it, the Emperor said, his voice almost reverent. To destroy the Force and rebuild it in my image. A perfect order. A perfect balance. But I require a spark. He turned to Beerus. You. Beerus smiled faintly. You want me to destroy your toy universe for you? Palpatine bowed slightly. No. I want you to replace it. Beerus stopped walking. The stars outside the window seemed to pause with him. He looked out at Coruscant's endless city lights, glittering like veins of civilization. Replace the Force, he mused. Become the new will of reality itself. Palpatine's grin grew sharper. Yes. Imagine, a galaxy with no light or dark. Only your command. For a long moment, Beerus said nothing. The silence stretched. Then he turned back to the Emperor. Tempting, Beerus admitted. But flawed. Palpatine's grin faltered. Flawed? Yes. Beerus raised one finger. Because your galaxy isn't broken because of the Force. It's broken because of you. A pulse of divine energy burst outward. Every guard in the palace dropped unconscious instantly. The walls trembled, and the stars outside shimmered as if afraid. The revelation. Palpatine staggered backward, his body straining as he tried to summon the Force, but it felt distant, muffled, weak. What are you doing? He gasped. Beerus raised his palm. Listening. The entire galaxy's energy field flowed around him, rivers of light, pain, and emotion. Through Beerus's eyes, Palpatine could see it too, the Force itself. It looked alive, not a power, but a being. And it was afraid. He does not belong. A voice echoed through the air, layered with millions of whispers. The walls turned translucent, revealing visions, Jedi, Sith, stars, and the great cycle of rebirth that had defined this universe for eons. He is unmaking the balance. Palpatine fell to his knees. It speaks. Beerus tilted his head. Finally decided to show yourself. A shimmer formed before them, a vast, ethereal figure composed of light and shadow, neither male nor female, both ancient and eternal. You cannot stay, outsider. Your presence destroys creation. Beerus chuckled softly. Then maybe creation should build something stronger. The figure pulsed, its form rippling between peace and chaos. Leave now, or we will unmake you. Beerus's eyes glowed gold. Try. The clash beyond reality. The galaxy shuddered. Every Force-sensitive being screamed as the two titans collided, not in space, but within the Force itself. Planets dimmed. Moons cracked. Stars flickered like candles. Beerus's aura flared violet gold, pushing back against the cosmic entity. The Force, in defense, erupted into storms of pure energy, creating vast rifts of reality that bent the laws of physics. In seconds, entire systems went dark. On Yavin 4, Luke collapsed. On Dagobah, Yoda gasped, clutching his chest. Even Vader, aboard his ship, fell to one knee, his armor creaking under invisible weight. Impossible, he wheezed. The Force is fighting. Inside the Imperial Palace, Palpatine was thrown across the floor as energy waves tore through the city. The windows shattered, and the heavens above split open, revealing flashes of both creation and destruction intertwined. At the center of it all, Beerus hovered calmly, his aura tearing through dimensions. The Force entity screamed, its voice echoing through all of existence. You cannot destroy what binds life. Beerus's smirk deepened. I'm not destroying it. He raised one hand. The energy condensed into a sphere, not of destruction, but of silence. I'm fixing it. He released the sphere. It expanded, gentle, luminous, quiet. Where it passed, balance returned. The Force storm stopped. The rifts sealed. The galaxy steadied. And then, as quickly as it began, it was over. Aftermath. Palpatine rose weakly, smoke rising from his robes. He looked around in disbelief. The stars outside were calm. The Force felt, muted, but alive. Beerus hovered above the ruined palace floor, his aura fading. What did you do? Palpatine whispered. Beerus looked over his shoulder, serene as ever. I reset your Force. Removed its emotions. Its chaos. Its ego. Palpatine trembled. You took control of it. Beerus smiled. No. I set it free. Something you'll never understand. He began to rise into the air again. Palpatine called out desperately, wait. You can't just leave. I need. Beerus looked down. You don't need power, Emperor. You need purpose. Then he vanished, gone in a pulse of golden light. The Force reborn. Across the galaxy, silence reigned. And then, for the first time in centuries, peace. The Jedi ghosts watched from beyond, their auras calm. Luke felt something new, not the pull of light or dark, but clarity. Yoda smiled faintly, eyes closing. Balance, at last. And far beyond the stars, floating in the endless void between galaxies, Beerus opened his eyes again. Whis appeared beside him, holding his staff, smiling knowingly. Done meddling, Lord Beerus. Beerus stretched. TCH, mortals make such a mess of things. Whis chuckled. And yet you always fix them. Beerus smirked. No. I just remind them what balance really means. He turned, looking back at the faint glimmer of the Star Wars galaxy, whole, calm, and forever changed. Let them worship their Force, Beerus said, tail swaying lazily. Because now, it finally knows fear. The war was over, but there was no victory. Only silence. Whole star systems hung still, wrapped in an eerie violet glow that swallowed sound and bent time. The Force itself, once a storm of whispers and will, had become quiet, too quiet. From Coruscant to Naboo, temples crumbled. Jedi who reached out for guidance found nothing. No light. No dark. Only a suffocating stillness that answered every question with the same hollow echo. You were never in control. They knew the truth now. Beerus hadn't destroyed the galaxy. He had silenced it. The Force, their God, their guide, their faith, had been put on trial, and found wanting. In the ruins of the old Jedi Council chamber, 5 survivors knelt in a circle. Their robes were torn, their faces pale, their sabers useless. But their spirits, fragile as they were, burned with one final purpose, to plead. Master Soria Valen, once Grand Master of the Order, placed her palms together. Around her, the last sparks of Force energy flickered weakly, like dying embers. He is not our enemy, she whispered. He is the reflection we refuse to see. Her apprentice, a young Zabrak named Ren, trembled. Then what is he, Master? A god? A demon? Soria looked toward the violet horizon beyond the shattered temple wall. He is what the Force becomes when it stops pretending to be kind. The others bowed their heads. In one voice, they began the plea of equilibrium, an ancient ritual older than the Republic, never spoken since the dawn of the Jedi. Force of all and none, hear us. Forgive our arrogance. Return the current to our souls. Their voices echoed through the empty halls, faint, desperate, unworthy. Yet the galaxy listened. For the first time since the dawn of creation, the Force shook. Its fabric rippled like water struck by thunder. Stars flickered, collapsing under the pressure of divine sorrow. The energy field that bound all life wept, and its tears burned through the void. Beerus felt it. He sat at the heart of that silence, tail wrapped lazily around his throne of broken moons. His eyes opened, sharp, golden, endless. Whis hovered beside him, serene as ever. They're praying to you again, Lord Beerus, Whis said, smiling faintly. No. They're praying to the Force to protect them from me. Beerus leaned forward, resting his clawed hand on his chin. Funny. They don't realize it's the same thing now. The Force, bleeding through the cosmos, began to take form, a luminous shape, shifting between light and shadow. A voice boomed across all dimensions, trembling with sorrow and awe. Why have you done this, Destroyer? I gave them life. I gave them purpose. Beerus rose from his seat, every motion effortless yet eternal. And you gave them fear. You made them slaves to your balance. I simply reminded them what silence feels like. The voice of the Force thundered again. You have unmade what I am. Beerus smirked. Then maybe you weren't much to begin with. Back on Coruscant, the Jedi's chant grew frantic. The ruins shook, the air crackled, their words twisted into light. And then, for a heartbeat, time froze. Beerus appeared among them. He didn't descend or materialize. He was simply there, violet skin shimmering, golden eyes glowing brighter than their sun's. Every Jedi fell to their knees, crushed by the weight of his presence. Master Soria forced herself to speak, voice trembling. God of destruction, if you are balance, then hear us. We were wrong. We sought control, not harmony. Do not end us, teach us. For a long time, Beerus said nothing. The only sound was the wind howling through the broken pillars. Finally, he looked down at her, not with anger, not even with pity, but with the kind of detachment that only eternity could afford. You ask for wisdom after wasting millennia chasing power. You worship the Force as if it were a god. But the Force is a heartbeat. It doesn't need temples. He stepped forward. Every motion bent gravity, making the ruins groan. You speak of balance. Yet you built armies. You spoke of peace. Yet you made war. Tell me, little Jedi, where in that chaos did you ever honor your own creed? Soria bowed her head. Nowhere, my lord. Beerus's gaze softened, just slightly. Good. Then there's hope for you yet. Beerus raised his hand. The air turned molten, reality itself bending around his claws. Every Jedi gasped, but no pain came. Instead, a pulse of light expanded outward, touching each of them. It wasn't destruction. It was clarity. Visions flooded their minds, of creation, destruction, and rebirth. They saw the Force not as a duality of light and dark, but as motion itself. Life, death, renewal. One eternal rhythm. When the light faded, Beerus stood above them, tail flicking lazily. You wanted the Force to speak again. It will. But next time, listen. He turned to leave, his aura dissolving into shimmering dust. Before he vanished completely, he looked back once more. Balance doesn't mean peace. It means knowing when to stop pretending you deserve it. And with that, he was gone. When the Jedi awoke, the temple was whole again. The violet glow had faded, replaced by a soft golden sunrise over Coruscant. Their sabers hummed gently, not with power, but with calm. Master Soria looked up at the sky, whispering. He didn't destroy us. He purified us. From that day on, the Jedi abandoned their old codes. No more light side. No more dark side. Only the way of stillness, a path inspired not by fear of destruction, but by the memory of a God who silenced the Force itself, and taught it how to breathe again. And so, the Jedi finally understood. Balance was never about power. It was about surrender. The destroyer didn't end their story, he reset it. In the quiet that followed, a new era began. Not ruled by fear, nor faith, but by the lesson of a God who reminded the galaxy that even divinity must rest. It began with a sound, not heard, but felt. A vibration so deep it shook the hearts of stars and made galaxies flinch. In that moment, all living things, from the smallest insect on Naboo to the dying suns of the Outer Rim, looked to the same point in the sky. The Force was gathering itself. On the edge of reality, where light gave way to nothingness, the void ignited with color, blue, gold, crimson, violet, swirling like a living nebula. And from its core rose a shape, vast, luminous, eternal. The Force had taken form. Its face was ever shifting, now a woman, now a man, now the shape of every being who ever called upon it. It spoke in 1,000 voices at once. Beerus. You trespass. The destroyer smirked, tail flicking. You sound angry. I like that. Whis sighed softly beside him, staff in hand. Please don't break another universe, my lord. We just fixed this one. Beerus raised a claw, golden eyes gleaming. No promises. The Force's light grew blinding, filling the void. Planets drifted toward the confrontation like moths to flame. Every Force-sensitive soul screamed, not from pain, but recognition. This was their God, and it was afraid. You were not born of me, it thundered. You exist outside my flow. Beerus grinned. I exist because you stopped growing. Someone had to keep things interesting. Lightning surged between them, bending dimensions. time cracked like glass. For one impossible instant, every Jedi and Sith across history, living or dead, witnessed the moment. The embodiment of the Force, ancient and infinite. Versus Beerus, the god of destruction, chaos given purpose. Beerus vanished, and reappeared an atom's width from the Force's core. A single flick of his finger shattered 10 constellations. Reality twisted, folding upon itself like paper. The Force struck back, not with power, but with existence itself. Every heartbeat, every living cell across the galaxy flared into light, channeling energy into the divine storm. I am all that is. And I, Beerus roared, purple aura igniting like a nova. I am what keeps you from becoming too much. They collided. The explosion erased centuries in an instant. Past, present, and future disintegrated, then fused. Yoda, Luke, Rey, Anakin, all saw it. Across infinite timelines, they gasped the same words. Balance. Whis watched calmly as stars bled light and space screamed. Ah, this reminds me of the time you fought the Dreaming One, Lord Beerus. He was easier to punch, Beerus growled. The Force countered, forming millions of phantom worlds around him. Each world represented a choice, every decision, every sin, every spark of life Beerus had ever touched. You destroy without understanding, it roared. I understand too well, he answered. Creation only has meaning because I exist. He clenched his fist. The phantom world shattered. But even gods tire. Beerus dropped to one knee, breathing slow, his aura flickering. You're strong, he muttered. Too strong. I am the Force. No, Beerus said, standing again. You're just scared to stop being everything. The Force's light trembled. Without me, there is nothing. Beerus closed his eyes, calm now, almost gentle. Exactly. That's why you need me. He raised his hand, not to strike, but to release. A pulse of violet energy spread outward. It didn't destroy. It erased noise. All things, stars, spirits, light, went still. The Force gasped. For the first time since the beginning of time. It felt peace. When the light faded, the two stood alone in the void. No war. No fire. No chaos. Only stillness. Beerus looked down at his open palm. You see now. Balance isn't about control. It's about knowing when to stop. The Force pulsed faintly, its voice now soft, almost human. And what of you, Destroyer? What do you become when there's nothing left to break? Beerus smirked. I rest. He turned, stepping back into the fold of galaxies that were reforming behind him. Whis followed, smiling knowingly. Shall I mark this one as a success, my lord? No, Beerus replied. Mark it as a conversation. When the Force awoke again, eons had passed. It no longer spoke in commands or destinies. It whispered instead, calm, balanced, patient. The Jedi felt it first. The Sith too. And in that unity of silence, they understood the truth. Balance was not achieved through the Force. It was achieved within it. Across the stars, temples rebuilt. Lightsabers ignited once more. But their hums were softer now, not weapons of will, but instruments of harmony. And though none would ever speak his name again, every sunrise that shimmered violet across the galaxy carried his mark. As the stars healed, Whis turned to Beerus, who was already half asleep on a drifting asteroid. You've done it again, my lord. Beerus mumbled. Restored balance. I didn't restore anything, Beerus murmured. I just reminded them why it matters. He yawned, curling his tail around himself as he drifted into slumber. Far away, the Force, now silent and still, whispered across the cosmos. The destroyer was never my enemy. He was my reflection. And so, the God who fought the Force slept once more. While the galaxy, reborn in quiet harmony, learned to breathe. When the clash ended, the galaxy did not rejoice. It simply existed. Stars flickered back to life one by one, like candles relit after a funeral. Worlds began to turn again. The Force flowed, softer, steadier, humbled. But something was different. Every sentient being, from the high towers of Coruscant to the lonely dunes of Jakku, felt watched. Not by a god above them, but by the memory of one. Whispers filled the minds of millions, not words, but impressions. A feline gaze, violet light, and a quiet question that echoed across time. Now that you remember peace, what will you do with it? On Coruscant, in the skeletal remains of the old Senate Rotunda, the galaxy's survivors gathered, Jedi, Sith, senators, smugglers, droids, and beings who had never before shared a room without violence. No one sat on a throne. No one claimed leadership. They called themselves simply, the Remnants. At the center of the hollow chamber floated a projection, an image of the cosmic battle etched into the Force itself. They had all seen it, Beerus and the living Force clashing in eternity. They had all heard the silence that followed. Master Sorya Valen, now frail but radiant, rose to speak. The Force has spoken through its quiet. The destroyer judged not our sins, but our ignorance. We were children with power, and no humility. A Sith elder, cloaked in crimson, scoffed. And what, we beg forgiveness from a god who nearly erased us. Sorya met his gaze. He didn't erase us. He reset us. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The old Force, our light and dark, is gone. The galaxy stands without chains now. That is our punishment. And our freedom. As debates raged, a phenomenon swept through the stars. It began on Alderaan's ruins, a world long destroyed but mysteriously reassembling itself. Ghosts walked its valleys, echoes of those who had perished, reborn not in flesh but in light. They did not speak. They judged. Their presence spread, to Coruscant, to Dathomir, to Mandalore. Every world saw them, luminous silhouettes of the dead, watching, silent, reflective. The galaxy realized the truth. The Force was measuring its children. Not by creed. Not by alignment. By intent. Those who had lived for power found their spirits fading, turned to dust on the wind. Those who had loved, protected, or created found themselves surrounded by gentle light, spared, renewed. And in the cosmic distance, Beerus watched silently from his throne of asteroids. Whis stood beside him, hands clasped. They're being weighed, my lord. They always were, Beerus replied. Now they finally see it. The judgment wasn't handed down by any god, it unfolded naturally, like gravity. Planets that thrived on greed began to wither, their skies dimmed, their oceans turned black. Worlds that lived in harmony flourished, even war-torn ones like Mandalore bloomed with life for the first time in centuries. The Force had become a mirror, reflecting every soul's truth back at them. One young Jedi initiate, kneeling in the Temple of Stillness, whispered. He didn't destroy the wicked. He let them destroy themselves. Her master nodded. That was his judgment. As the galaxy adjusted to its quiet penance, something stirred again in the Force. Not the roar of divine power, a whisper, faint but clear, echoing in every mind. Balance is not a gift. It is a debt. Keep it, or I will return. The voice was Beerus's. Calm. Certain. A warning, not a threat. And then, as suddenly as it came, the voice was gone, leaving behind a shuddering galaxy, aware of its fragile new dawn. Centuries passed. The story of the destroyer became religion. Not worship, remembrance. Temples were built not in Beerus's name, but in his absence. Empty halls filled with quiet wind, where monks meditated on nothingness. They called it the doctrine of stillness, a way of living that honored destruction as part of existence, not its opposite. In the sacred texts, one phrase was carved into every temple wall. He judged not by right or wrong, but by whether we could still listen. When the last sun of the outer rim began to fade, Whis stood beside his sleeping lord. Beerus's body was still, his breathing slow, his aura dim but infinite. Whis looked out over the galaxies now glowing softly, whole, peaceful, balanced. You see, my lord, he whispered. Your judgment was never wrath. It was mercy. A faint smirk curved Beerus's lips, even in slumber. Same thing, he murmured, half asleep. They just never liked the word. Whis smiled. And the galaxy, finally understanding, drifted into its next era, not ruled by gods, but by awareness. 1,000 generations later, a single holocron was discovered beneath the rebuilt Jedi temple. It contained a voice, ancient, smooth, and amused. If you're hearing this, the voice said, it means you survived your own choices. Good. Maybe you've learned what I already knew. Creation doesn't need saving. It needs reminding. The voice paused, as if smirking through eternity. Balance isn't peace. It's the price you pay for it. Beerus, the god who judged the stars. The galaxy was judged not by power, but by purpose. The Force, reborn through silence, carried his shadow forever. In every calm before the storm, in every sunrise that trembles violet. The cosmos remembers the God who asked only one question. What will you do with balance, once you have it? The galaxy burned, and then it didn't. Whole systems once lit by blaster fire and force lightning now floated in eerie silence. Worlds that had screamed under the weight of destruction were now ghostly quiet, their scars glowing faintly under the light of dying suns. The Force itself, once a symphony of life and motion, now hummed in dissonance, fractured by a divine intrusion. And Beerus sat quietly atop a broken moon. His eyes were half closed, tail swaying lazily in the cosmic wind. Before him, what remained of Coruscant shimmered like a fading ember, half its surface swallowed by molten crust. Behind him, Whis stood with his usual composed smile, staff glowing softly. Quite the performance, Lord Beerus, Whis mused, tracing the staff through the air. The mortals called you a god of destruction, and you've certainly lived up to the name. But, was it satisfying? Beerus didn't answer immediately. He stared out into the void where once millions of voices had cried out in terror, then gone silent. They challenged me, Beerus finally said, his tone mild but edged. They spoke of balance, destiny, prophecy, but none of that means anything if you don't understand your place in the cosmos. He clenched his fist, and a distant planet, once home to Jedi refugees, collapsed in on itself, vanishing into a violet spark. The Force, he muttered, it tried to stand against me. It whispered in my mind, offered power, peace, even understanding. But I am beyond such things. Whis tilted his head. And yet, you didn't erase everything. Beerus's ears twitched. Below them, the ruins of the Jedi temple glowed faintly. A few small life signatures pulsed within, survivors. Destruction needs witnesses, Beerus replied calmly. What's the point of ending a universe if no one remembers how easily it fell? Meanwhile, across the fractured galaxy, a handful of survivors clung to life. Rey, scarred and trembling, watched from the edge of an asteroid belt. Her once bright saber was dull and cracked, its light flickering weakly. She whispered to the void, her voice breaking. The Force, it's still there. We just have to believe. There's always balance, always. Her words rippled faintly through the Force, carried like a dying breath across the stars. Somewhere, Luke's ghostly voice whispered back. Not balance, Rey. Rebirth. On the other side of the galaxy, the remnants of the Sith plotted in darkness. A lone shadow, Darth Nihilus Reborn, watched Beerus's energy patterns through ancient monitors. Even gods bleed, he rasped. And when they do, the Force will feed. The seeds of rebellion, of vengeance, began to stir again. Back on the moon, Whis raised a brow. You've reshaped this galaxy, Lord Beerus. Its gods are gone, its mortals broken. What now? Beerus yawned, stretching his arms behind his head. Now, he said lazily. Now I nap. Maybe next time I'll visit another universe. One with better cuisine. Whis chuckled softly as his staff shimmered. Very well. I'll note that the Star Wars universe has been properly evaluated. Beerus smirked. Properly destroyed, you mean? As the two ascended into the blinding glow of hyperspace, the fractured remains of the galaxy slowly began to settle. The Force, wounded but not dead, whispered one last vow into the silence. From ashes, life shall rise again. Beerus's arrival reshaped everything. The Force itself bowed before a power it could not comprehend. But in destruction, there is always the seed of creation. Tell me, if a god can destroy the Force, can the Force ever destroy a god? Subscribe for more epic Star Wars what-if stories, where the Force meets the impossible, and destiny is rewritten by gods.